And so at some point, I felt myself just leave my body, and I was suddenly on the other side. And I was in this like beautiful heavenly world, there was all these beautiful mountains, like galactic mountains. And then all the gods that I'd been reading about were dancing on top of their own mountain. And each of them was kind of moving in their own essence. And I just was like looking around and I was just like so happy, so excited. And I was like, whoa, and I had no pain. So I was like, this is exciting. Like, I want to stay here. And then I heard God's voice, which I think it's important because it was the same voice I'd been hearing my whole life. It said to me, Pantea, I know what you've been through, like, how much pain you've been through. It's what she was implying. And it said, if you want to come home, you can.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channel Within. I'm Mira, and today I'm delighted to be speaking with Dr. Pontea Dianati about her NDE and about her spiritual journey. She is a spiritually gifted healer and doctor of psychology who's had a near-death experience during sinus surgery. Welcome, Dr. Dianati, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Mira. Thank you for inviting me. So good to be here with you.
The feeling is mutual. So, do you want to get started with life before your ND to give us a little context of your background?
Yes, like kind of like what my spiritual life was like before
Yeah,
my NDE, is that what I mean?
yes.
So, I guess like to keep it kind of concise, as a little girl, I was always obsessed with God. That was like one of my favorite subjects, which I don't know if that's normal for everybody, but for me and for you, Mira, I know you had a similar fascination with God since you were a little girl. So I was very obsessed with God. So I lived in Iran, even though I was born in the US. So the only place you could go find God over there was the mosque. So I would stay up all night praying to God, trying to connect to God. And it was just like very, very important to me. And I felt like there was this voice that was guiding me as a little girl. So fast forward to, I got older, I moved to America as a teenager. And, I became a normal teenager, just going to high school, trying to get good grades and, really strict Persian parents. I had to, do all the right things. And yeah, then when I was like around 18 or 19, I started to like see auras and things like that. After I started reading some spiritual books, I could see auras around plants and around people. So this kind of got me fascinated and, started, as God always does for us, God started placing spiritual teachers on my path. Different events I would go to, I would meet different teachers. And so I started having trainings, with them and different stages of my life. And I stayed with each of my teachers a long time, basically till they told me, okay, this part of your lesson is complete. I would stay with one teacher. And then, I just kind of got older. I went to school, I wanted to work with children. I really always like protecting the youth of the world was like a big topic to me. So I went to study psychology, became an elementary school teacher. But then the kids would always come to me and they would tell me about like their, how they saw angels or how they saw their ancestors. And so I was like, okay, maybe I got to switch careers because a room for the 30 kids is not really the right thing for me. It seems to be more that I'm supposed to do one-on-one work because people can then just open up to me. So I went to school for psychology to a very holistic school, which was not a traditional school. I did my bachelor's and my master's of like, traditional schooling. But then for my PhD, I went to this holistic school, California Institute for Human Science, which is a Japanese research institute where they actually measure the chakras and, there's all this research published. So it felt right to me. And yeah, so that was my schooling. I finished a PhD and yeah, and then so all that was happening. And then just I think 4 years ago was when I had my NDE. So all along I was spiritual, I was into God, I was studying the masters, Yogananda, Babaji, the Sufi masters, Rumi. I became very obsessed with the Divine Mother around 2016 because she started appearing to me. So I realized, oh, there's a feminine aspect of God as well. And that was significant for me. Um, And then, yeah, and then I had my ND in 2022 because I had been sick for a very, very long time. I was always sick since I was a little girl. I always had medical challenges because when I was 6 years old, I had rheumatic fever and it attacked my heart, and half of my body basically became disabled. I couldn't move. And so, flash forward to when I got older, right before my NDE, I'd had this headache. I think at that point it was maybe 6 years, and it was like constant, not like a headache that comes for like a day or two. It was just almost every single day I had level 8 to 10 in my body. And it was so bad where I would like roll on the floor, I would throw up, I would have to take days off of work. And so one of the surgeons that I met, he was like, let's do sinus surgery on you. He's like, all right, well, maybe it's your sinuses because we did a CT and he found a bunch of water stuck in the under my face. And so he said, let's do sinus surgery. And I was like, okay, like I was pretty desperate because the pain was so bad. And I was like, well, I've already tried everything else. I've seen all these doctors, holistic, Eastern, Western. Nobody's been able to even make a little bit of a dent, unfortunately. So, yeah, so then I had the surgery. So the morning of the surgery, I had a really bad feeling, and I believe it was like the third day of the year of the tiger, and I'm born the year of the tiger. And in lunar astrology, they say whenever it's your year, which happens every 12 years, that's the year where you should be really careful, you know? So it's usually not recommended to do surgeries or anything like that. But I just prayed to God and I was just like, God, I have a bad feeling about today. But I just placed myself in your hand, and may whatever happens, use it for me to be of service to humanity, which is a protection prayer that someone had taught me. So I go under the knife, and it was supposed to be just a simple, balloon surgery where they expand so you can get the water out. But when I got out of the surgery, I was in so much more pain. It was like my pain was like even worse. And I go home and there was liquid coming out of my nose constantly. And I just thought, okay, well, maybe it's just the blood coming out from the surgery, like the sutures or something like that. But it was liquid water, like it wasn't blood. It was like mostly clear. And so I think like then like I think it was 3 or 4 days after the surgery that I was home alone and I sneezed and I felt something just crack. It was like a like that. And it hurt so bad that I fell to the floor and I was just like, whoa, like what's going on? And I managed to somehow grab my phone, call my mom, and I said, oh my God, like I think I'm dying because that's how bad the pain was. So she had my sister come and get me and they took me to the emergency room. And when we got to the emergency room, I looked fine. So they're like, oh, it's just a headache. You've had these headaches for years. But then we told them no, like she just had sinus surgery, my sister said. And so then they did a CAT scan with the red dye in it, and they saw I had bubbles all in my cranium. So then we know that it was that's because it was like they said all these bubbles had got into my cranium, and I think it's called neocephalus. I don't know the correct diagnosis for it. So then they transferred me to the other hospital where they had done my surgery, and I ended up staying there for almost a week. And that's where I had my near-death experience. Because I was all alone, it was during COVID, and nobody was allowed to come to the hospital. I think my family visited me for like maybe an hour, and one of my best friends, Samira, she came and saw me. But the rest of the time, I was just alone with the nurses. And so at some point, I felt myself just leave my body, and I was suddenly on the other side. And I was in this like beautiful heavenly world, there was all these beautiful mountains, like galactic mountains. And then all the gods that I'd been reading about were dancing on top of their own mountain. And each of them was kind of moving in their own essence. And I just was like looking around and I was just like so happy, so excited. And I was like, whoa, and I had no pain. So I was like, this is exciting. Like, I want to stay here. And then I heard God's voice, which I think it's important because it was the same voice I'd been hearing my whole life. It said to me, Pantea, I know what you've been through, like, how much pain you've been through. It's what she was implying. And it said, if you want to come home, you can. You've done enough, something along those lines. But if you stay, you'll be able to help them with what is to come. And I remember like thinking for a moment, like, well, I really want to stay here because I know if I go back, I'm going to keep having medical problems. And but I thought about like, no, my family, my animals, and humanity. And I was just like, oh, there's like a lot coming for humanity, you know? And so I felt guilty. I was like, I have to go back because if I don't go back, you know, like basically I felt really like my help was going to be needed, you know, even though we're all important, I felt like my significant role was going to be just as significant as all of ours, like each of the puzzles. That was like the thought process, I think. And so, yeah, I just suddenly then I was back in the hospital room. It was like alarms were going off because it was ICU unit. So it was constantly alarms and monitors. And I was like, whoa, like I was just like suddenly back in there. And yeah, and then I was like, okay. And that was that. So that was like the NDE and, you know, the hospital and what happened there up until that point.
So before the NDE, you mentioned a Divine Mother. So which form did you see, or was it just you knew it was a feminine aspect?
You mean in the NDE or before my NDE,
Before,
right?
we'll go to the different
Oh, yeah,
gods that
yeah.
you in the
Before the
NDE
NDE, the
after.
first form of Divine Mother I felt was Mother Earth. So the earth aspect of her, because I remember she started coming into my body from the earth, and I could feel this feminine love just like filling me up and just holding me. And I was like, whoa, what is that? Because I'd felt the masculine aspect felt more like a gold energy to me. It kind of comes down and it's like a father, like grandfather, but her energy is like much more physical, like earth element. And so the first time I felt her was that, like her coming up my root chakra and just holding me. And she would just, when I had those headaches, for example, I would just lay on the earth for hours sometimes in the morning before I started work. And she would just send her energy into my brain. And it was almost like medicine. She would, and I would pray to her and I would say, Mother Earth, please send me the medicine I need for today. You know, because all the medicines come from Mother Earth, right? She's the mother of everything. So she would, I felt it. She would almost send like homeopathic remedies into me, flower essences into me, herbs into me. And so that was the first form of her that I connected to.
That is so beautiful. You know, you hear about the mother energy, that feminine energy feeling like a hug, and that's like an embrace, and that's exactly how you describe it. That's just so lovely.
Yeah.
Um, and now to the NDE, in the different forms of the divine that you saw dancing on the mountains. Can you tell us some examples of who you recognized?
So some of them I recognize, like I definitely recognize Mother Tara because she was dancing, which is a Buddhist aspect of Divine Mother. So she was just like very like twirling. And I saw Buddha and I kind of sensed like other princesses that were familiar, but I didn't see their faces. And 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 yeah, so it was like it seemed like there were so many of them that I didn't even know, to be honest. So it was just like a lot of gods. But I definitely remember like Tara and I remember Buddha like very distinctly being there. Yeah.
Besides hearing the God of the voice of God, did
Yes.
you interact with any others up there?
No, I just was watching them and it just seemed like they just were kind of like, oh, like it was just like they were just like, oh, she's here to join the dance party. So we were all just like dancing together in space, you know. So they were just like, hello, like no, but none of them talked to me. They were all just like in their own essence. Yeah, good question.
Sounds so festive and so so beautiful as well.
Yeah. I was like, what a beautiful heaven, a dancing heaven. If I had to choose a heaven, I definitely would have chosen a dancing one, you know? Because as a little kid, I
Absolutely.
always liked dancing in Iran, and it was like one of my hobbies.
Well,
So,
you know, it's so true then that these experiences that you guys have seem to be customized, you know? So imagine as a young child, that's what you identified with, and that's what you actually saw. So that's really nice.
you're right.
Um,
You're right. They do customize it, right? Like based on what believe in. Some people will see Jesus, some people will see, you know, Divine Mother, and all of them are one God. So to me, it's like, well, it's all one God just appearing to their children how they need, right? So, and then as you know, like in Sufism, dancing is a big part of connecting to God. People dance and they swirl to connect to God. to go into those trance states, which I'd never tried, to be honest. I'd read about it. I know it's like a training and it's very serious, so I don't want to discount that.
Yeah, and then in Hinduism also, one of the paths to God, the bhakti, it's the devotion and the singing, and some people do engage in like dancing, and it is supposed to incorporate the divine possibly dancing with you as well. So that is just amazing.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, because God is just like so sweet, To me, like God is like this very sweet presence that wants to dance with their children. So and you see like we see Shiva in his dancing form, right? I mean, he's doing the
Yeah,
dance of destruction when he starts dancing.
Nataraj, yes, the god of
Nataraj.
dance, yes,
Yeah.
the king of dance. That is
The King
correct.
of Dance. Yeah, it's a good title for him. I love Shiva. So
Aw. So
yeah.
how were you introduced to Shiva? To
Shiva,
Shiva?
I believe, let's see, the first time I heard about Shiva was in the poem Shivoham.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I know that was how I got introduced to Shiva, and then I wrote my college paper on that. The best
Yeah.
poem on God, if people want to read it, right? But if you just go Shivoham, it says everything God is not, because people will sometimes describe God, right, like as light, as fire, as all these things. But in the poem Shivoham, God is like, I am not this, I am not this, I am none of these elements you can think of. And so I wrote my paper to be like, God is an element none of us can even think of or fathom. So yeah, that was my one of my teachers. He taught me that poem. And yeah, one of my Indian teachers.
I
Yeah.
really love that one as well. And it ends with we are Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. We are joy and bliss, and we are Shiva. So we are not none less than God. It is one of my favorites as well.
Oh, I love that. Exactly. Exactly. Well said, Mira. Yes.
Yeah. And so so besides Shiva, how growing up, you said you loved to be at the mosque hearing about God, right? And the
Yes.
stories
Mhm.
about Noah and the biblical stories as well.
Yes. Yeah, I loved all of them. To me, they was just all fascinating. Moses was fascinating to me, how he had to stand up to his uncle. There always comes a time in the journey, it seems like, where you can't just be soft. There has to be this firmness comes in when your Dharma comes in, where God is telling you, you got to go and do this. Like, even if people are going to disagree with you. So I loved Moses, how he did that. And he's like, nope, I'm going to go against everything because this is a part of my path. And I remember, like, yeah, the story of Noah, same thing. See, hearing a voice, God telling them to do something, everyone's going to think they're crazy, but turns out to be right. And and I remember like the story of Jesus. I was obsessed with Yeshua even as a kid in Iran because like he could heal people. I love the fact that he was the only prophet in school. They would teach us in Iran about them, right? And he was the one that could heal people. And so I was like, what a powerful soul he is to be able to bring people back from being blind, from being, because healing was always really important to me, given that I was always sick my whole life. I was like, if somebody could teach me how to heal people, that's what I would care about the most, to put people out of physical pain, because it really affects people. So I really loved him. And yeah, all the saints. Like my dad would take me to his friends' houses and they were spiritual and they would sit around and tell stories, and I would just be like listening and going, wow. So, and then there's also like the Persian ancient gods, which in Iran they don't talk about too much openly because now Islam is kind of like used in a not good way in Iran to keep people, force them to do that. But the ancient Persian religion was Zoroastrianism. And so we had gods like Mitra, the god of the sun, or the goddess Anahita, who is the goddess of all the waters on the planet. So I didn't read about them too much, but I would see their pictures in the ancient texts and stuff like that. My dad was very spiritual, so he had a lot of spiritual things sticking around. So, but they weren't religious. Both of my parents weren't religious, so when I would go to the mosque, they wouldn't even come with me. So I would usually go like with my aunt or something. And my mom was always like, "Oh my God, why are you wearing a scarf?" And I would like to wear the little scarf and I would pray. It made me feel like a little saintly person. So yeah.
I like the openness because there are so many ways up the mountain, and I feel like, when we are open to different beliefs, we take what we want, what resonates with us, and so we become richer that way, in our connections with God.
I'm 100% with you, Mira. I feel like if we could all get that, then humanity would be a lot closer, because right now we're just arguing over commas, little things like God's name is this or this. It's like, well, in every religion, God seems to be a loving being. Why don't we focus on that? And karma seems to be present in every religion as well, too, whatever they want to call it. Our actions have a consequence, whether they're good or bad. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because, I 100% believe in karma, and it's not like a form of punishment, but it's just like a mathematical, it's a way the universe keeps everything fair. It's like a system. So people can always do good things to bring good things to themselves. And then when they do bad things, try to like learn from it and not repeat it. We all make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes. And God always just tells me, like, just don't do it again. Once you learn, like, don't do it again. I go, okay, okay. You know, so yeah.
I heard you talk about the different levels in heaven. Can you expand on that, Dr. Dianati?
Different levels of heaven, like how there's different heavens
Yeah,
that
yeah.
exist.
Based on our essence and where we go, or
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like in the Bhagavad Gita, as you know, because you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about different heavenly realms, right? And so it basically what we believe in is the kind of heaven we're going to end up in. So some people are worshiping the ancestors, they're going to go to maybe somewhere with their ancestors. If some people are focused on Christ or Krishna, they're going to go to the Krishna abode, which is in Bhagavad Gita, that's supposed to be one of the highest heavens. And so yeah, there is a lot of different heavens that exist. And there's also like knowledge, right? Like people, if they really want to continue learning, they can go to heavens or they can continue to get knowledge. And so it depends on what's important to us, because energy attracts like, right? And so when we die, it's the same thing. Our soul leaves our body and it goes to where it's being drawn to go further. Because there is no death, as you and I were talking about before we started the interview. There is no such a thing, death. Everything continues. And physics even says nothing can be created nor destroyed. Therefore, we can't be created or destroyed. We just switch forms. And so, yeah, and then there's also no hell. I think like that's another misconception we got to just throw out because people seem to think they're going to go to hell. When people have negative NDEs or, they think they've gone to hell, they're just experiencing the negative karmic things they've done or the things they have inside of them, like, that they haven't worked out. So it's just like, it's more like an inner realm. And in depth psychology, we call it the underworld. In shamanic psychology, they call it the underworld. So it's not like a punishment. It's more just like the dark parts of ourselves we haven't faced, or the dark parts of the universe we haven't faced. That's why shadow work and this kind of stuff is so important. We can't just focus on like positive spirituality, positive thinking. Yes, those are important. But if we don't face our like anger, sadness, guilt, shame, lust, all these things, like try to understand it. I don't mean face it by like harshness, but just be like, why did I get angry? Or why did I get sad? Or why was this there? Just be curious about it. Then to me, that's 50% of the work in spirituality, to be honest. So
I like that, not shunning it,
not shunning it.
yeah, but lovingly addressing it, or like you said, be curious about it, and
Yeah.
that way, we will be able to be authentic with all of
Because
our.
everyone experiences it, everyone gets sad, everyone gets angry, everyone feels guilt, all these things we're all experiencing. And I trust the people that can like talk about it with me. Some people tell me like, you should never get angry, it's not spiritual. And I'm like, I don't know, Jesus got pretty angry when he flipped that table. So I'm not sure if that's the truth. So I think it's more like taming the shadow and then using it as needed in different circumstances, you know?
Yeah, and I love your analogies about heaven and hell because, when I play video games with my son, there are many levels that are available. And so, I know of the existence of, say, level 25, but I can't enter it because I have to work or to get to that level based on, clearing out the energy, or just and then we can enter that area, I like the hell, like you said, when NDEs have hellish experiences. I love how they are able to move at the frequency of their thought,
Mhm.
where once help is requested, or they are able to move out from that situation. So, and it seems perceived, and so self-perceived, and then they're able to move out, so that is just comforting when we hear that.
Yes, like if even if right in life when we feel like we're in hell, right? Like because we all go through challenging times, just in that moment, if we ask God for help, just like really be sincerely asking God for help, we will always be given the help. Sometimes it just doesn't look like the way we expect it, right? Because I have people come to me all the time for sessions and they're like, I'm praying to God. It feels like God is not hearing me. And I'm like, I don't know. It seems like three people came to help you and you ignored them. So God will usually send help. It's not going to be always a lightning storm. So I do believe that, yeah, whether it's an NDE or real life hell, if we pray sincerely from the heart, God always hears it and responds. But
I
unexpected
Yeah.
ways, which we can't tell God how to help us, because if we knew the answer, we would have already solved it. So if we tell God, hey, my help is going to come in the form of money, maybe our help is going to come in the form of a new job, and in that new job, we're going to meet some new friends and then we're going to open up a business, so God's gonna give us like the best route. I just, yeah, surrendering to God 100%, even though we're all God, right? Like as you said, like God is in all of us, and that's true. But from my experience, there's also this great creator. So I'm never going to get to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, we're all God. We don't need God. No, no, I still need God. So that's kind of where I feel. And then I have to surrender to God every single day still.
Yeah, I really like that you brought it back to real life, that when we requested the help, also we get it,
Yeah,
because it's so true.
absolutely.
Dr. Dianati, did you
Sure.
get any additional gifts with your NDE? Because you did have some prior to it as well.
Yeah, as I believe every human is psychic. Like I don't think I'm special because I have psychic abilities. I really do believe all humans are psychic. I just would say it's from level 1 to level 10. And let's say some people are like a little bit psychic and some people are like super psychic, like my one of my teachers, Reverend Bill McDonald, he's so advanced. He sees things way in the future. For my ND, yeah, I would definitely say my gifts got a lot more intensified, let's say, you know. So before when I would meet someone, it would maybe take me some time to know things about them, like a few, like maybe sometimes even a year, to really get to know a lot about them. But now when I meet people, I already know, I can already see so much about them. Like either I see it or I hear it or God is telling me something. Also my dream gifts, I think, got more advanced probably. Now when I have a dream, I always know what it means. Whereas before my dreams were more random, more like processing things. But now when I have a dream, it's almost telling me what's going to come in the future, with regards to my own life or somebody that I love or one of my clients or something like that. And what else? Like I think like my healing abilities probably changed too, so it was like maybe things got shortened to some degree, like things that would take longer processes, we could just kind of go to them. And to be honest, I'm still kind of figuring it out, It's only been 4 years and it kind of like I kind of feel like a little kid, like I was reborn. So I'm only 4 years old. Like I don't feel like the age I am anymore, which is strange. So I'm still figuring out the gifts, and what's all come online. Yeah.
Do you think psychology is coming closer to spirituality?
I hope so, because unless they do, no one's gonna get better, because psychology, like, there does seem to be like, Stanford has always been doing research on psychic abilities, for example. So there's certain institutes that know, and then the government's involved with them. And we know the government uses psychics to do remote viewing to find bad people, for example. So the reality is there. How many people know about it? We don't know. But yeah, like psychology to me, like the reason I left traditional psychology is because to me it was just so sad to like have people come and diagnose them. Like I just hated doing that. I hated telling people, oh, you're bipolar or you're depressed or you're schizophrenic. To me, it was just like I was looking at them and I'm like, they're just having a bad day, or like their mom just died. Of course they're having an emotional reaction, or they're schizophrenic, like the psychiatrist would say, yeah, this one's schizophrenic. I'm like, well, it looks like he's done acid 30 times. Maybe first we should help get those out of his system, then let's see if he resets. So a lot of the things they're diagnosing are just like chemical issues that can be fixed with like vitamins and homeopathy. And yeah, like just simple things like fish oils, B complex, D vitamins. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just saying like these are just common knowledge things every mother knows, that like a lot of things could get better. But instead, when people go to these psych places, they just put them on medication. They treat them so badly in some of these places. They lock them up and they tie them down. And let's say the person's having PTSD because like somebody they love just died. So I'm really not a fan of traditional psychology, to be honest. And that's why I'm really hoping they'll go more towards spirituality because everything seems to be a spiritual illness. That doesn't mean we don't have to face our traumas. We still have to heal our traumas if we were shamed or hurt or something like that, or all this stuff. But I don't really think therapy works unless it involves the body somehow, because everything is stored in the soul. It's not stored in the mind. That like kind of like what psychology wants to say. They want to make you think differently, and then, oh, now your life is going to be different. But coming from yogic perspective, we know the mind will never change. The mind is just like a machine. So we can't change it. We have to just learn to go beyond it through meditation. So if people were learning how to stay in silence, then their anxious thoughts would eventually just settle down. So it's not about changing them. It's about going deeper into silence so we don't hear them. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Dr. Dianati, if someone is taking care of a loved one who's at the edge of death or is at the edge of death themselves, what advice do you have for them?
I would say, like, hold your loved one's hand, pray for God to come and get them. Like, God, please come and grab my loved one and and I always say, God, please take them to the highest heaven they can go to, you know? And so I would definitely say, like, see it as like a sacred thing. And if they're in a hospital, please try to make it so they don't die alone. I recently had to help someone because their mother died alone and none of them were there with her. And her soul was stuck, like she hadn't moved on. And so we had to go and, do a little timeline cleaning and help the mom go back up. So yeah, a lot of people in hospitals are dying alone. And so I would definitely say, yeah, don't leave them alone. Make it a sacred experience and pray to God, come and get them. If you believe in Yeshua, ask Yeshua to come get them. If they believed in Buddha, ask Buddha to come get them. They're all just one God. So yeah, I would definitely ask for that kind of assistance. And then check in with them, maybe after they pass in a week or two, in 3 weeks, sit in meditation and ask them, like, are you in heaven? Have you moved on? And if you have a good dream about them, for example, that'll show you that they are moved on and they're happy. Typically, when people come to me and they're having bad dreams about their loved one, like 2 years later, it seems like they haven't like moved on. Somehow they are worried about their loved one or something like that. But I'm not a medium. This is just something I do like in session. If somebody comes to me and they're upset or something, like I'll try to pray and help them. But that's not like a session I like to offer unless it's like needed, basically.
I love that about being present, being just present for the loved one. My mom would see her sisters. She would ask me if I gave them food. I used to tell her yes. And then my dad's last week, he couldn't eat. And one day, he had that terminal lucidity where was he was unconscious and came to on 2 days before he passed, and he was doing this motion. And I
Mm.
asked him what he was doing, and he told me his mom was feeding him. That gave that
Wow.
gave me so much comfort as well because he was unable to eat. And then he actually asked me if I could move to the side a little bit because his family were behind me. Well, yeah.
I
So
just got chills when you said that. Yeah.
yeah, it was just so comforting for me. So thank you so much for that reminder.
I love that you did that for both of your parents, you know. That's like the most beautiful karmic thing we could do. You know, it's one of the most important things is to help our parents with that transition, you know. And I'm just so proud of you that you were strong enough to do that. And of course you're strong and you did that. And so what you were saying about family is that she started to see family arriving as she was like in because they do come. Yeah, I forgot to say that. Thank you. Yeah, that when they're getting ready to pass, their mom and dad might come and get them, or their aunts might come and get them, and they see them, you know. A lot of people say that happens. These are the sacred moments of spirituality, you know. To me,
Yes,
like this is what I mean
yes,
by like the shadow aspect of spirituality is so important. Like it hurts so much, but then it's also so beautiful. And then
yes.
to know that like your dad and mom were going to be taken care of, like you were basically handing them over to people that love them just as much as you.
Yes,
You
it
know?
was so nice to know that they were being accompanied on their journey. Dr. Dianati, is there anything that you feel important to share that we haven't touched on already?
Okay, let's see. Um, Yeah, the Earth grid. So I just want to say that there is like an energetic, you know, grid around the Earth. So as we see the world, you know, different things happening in the world, we can send energy into the Earth grid, and our energy can greatly influence and bring help to people. So if you do watch the news and you see like a war in different countries, like in your meditation, you can send your blessing to that place. May the people have peace. May the people be well. Or if you really care about animals, you can use the Earth grid to send healing to all the animals all over the planet. Or let's say if your loved one is in another country and they're sick, you can also use the Earth grid to send them healing. So I just wanted to say that because I know sometimes a lot of spiritual people that watch these shows like yourself show, they feel powerless over certain things that are happening in the world. But we're not powerless. We're here for a reason. We've all been prepared for these moments. And so, and then you can talk to Mother Earth and ask her, because the Earth grid is like her chakras, you know? So you can say, Mother Earth, please send healing to this part of the world. And so I just wanted to let them know that they're here for a very important reason, exactly for this time, to help us transition to the good times ahead. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's not going to be like tomorrow, but there's better times ahead. So, yeah.
Dr. Dianati, why are we here? What is our purpose?
I would say like I think that's a really good question. I think it's a like every person's purpose is different, you know? So some people are here to be shadow workers. Some people are here to be healers. Some people are here to like be artists, you know? Imagine like when we see a painting and it's like, wow, like this makes your day better. So everybody's purpose is based on their soul frequency. You know, are you into science? Then your purpose is to find cures for illness, you know, but these are all just earthly things. So I think our highest purpose, like let's say the one we all share, is to go back into union with source, right? So yoga means union. It's not about downward upside dog. It's about union. So I think that's ultimately all of our purpose is to hopefully finish all our lessons and go back home and become one with source again, Christ again, God again, Divine Mother again, whichever aspect of God feels the most cozy to us. Because then we won't reincarnate here again, you know? Like when I told my teacher about my NDE, he's like, "Oh, well, you weren't going to graduate." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Because you went to a heaven." And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "If you were truly graduating, you would have just seen yourself melt into source and it would have been over."
So
And I
is
was
that
like,
moksha?
yeah, that's moksha. It's the ending. It's the final exit. So if we're still going to heavenly realms, it means we're still learning, we're still growing. But so I think that's the ultimate purpose is to have moksha, liberation, become free from reincarnation.
I love that. I heard an NDE talk about that once we have form, we are not finished yet. So, do you think it's possible then that if we do that merging with that source, um, the infinite being that doesn't have form, do you think we could possibly want to come back?
Oh wow, that's such a good question. I know some people have, like for example, Reverend Bill McDonald, when they did his palm leaf reading, they said he's a remukshad soul. It was in his
Wow, in the
leaves,
naughty.
in the Nadi palm leaf reading, which I just had mine done recently too, and it was
Oh my gosh,
amazing.
I have to
Have
get
you
my
done them?
fingerprint. I have to get my fingerprint and send it
Yes,
back to
with
them.
Dr. Q's Institute. That's the one I would
Yeah,
recommend.
yeah.
And yeah, Reverend Bill McDonald, for example, he's remukshad. So he has no reason to be here. He's literally just volunteered to come back. And he's had cancer for like 40 years. So just because you're a remukshad soul doesn't mean you're going to be on the mountain blissed out. You're actually, when remukshad souls come back, they take on the karma of others to help out. So I think some very brave souls would do that,
Yeah,
which
how
I'm
brave
like
and just
eternally
how
grateful to.
selfless, right?
So selfless. Like, yeah, you're in heaven just like with God, and then you're like, I'm gonna go back into that little firestorm, just to
Yeah,
help all these
exactly.
souls. So.
Wow, that's beautiful. Dr. Dianati, what brings you joy and laughter these days?
Well, I love my animals, I love nature. So like I have a little horsey that recently where I live, there's a horse there. So I go and I feed the horse. So nature is one of my favorite joys. I'll go sit by the ocean and then, hanging out with my dad, because he's still recovering from his stroke. So just hanging out with him, we dance together, and he's in his little wheelchair, so he'll kind of move like this with me. And so just the simple things, nature, family, my friends, spending time with my teachers, interviews like this with people like yourself, like talking about topics that actually make a difference in people's lives. Like this is what brings joy to me. I'm not really into like surface level things anymore. I never was. Even as a kid, I was like a little weirdo. But especially now, I'm just like, what are we talking about? Who cares about what happened, to some celebrity or even politics. It just seems like it's all part of the illusion of Maya. So, but the simple, just being a human is the most spiritual thing we can do. Just like cooking breakfast, is the most spiritual thing we can do if we're doing it in a mindful way, in my opinion.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
What would you tell your younger self who's about to embark on this beautiful journey of life?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I would tell her, trust your intuition. Trust your intuition. And you're right, like about the things you sense, and don't let people make you think your intuition is wrong because just trust your intuition. Because every time I didn't trust my intuition in life, I paid greatly for it. So I would like reinstate that for her, and I would reinstate that for everyone watching, like trust your intuition. And intuition is different from like our emotions. We have like when we're in a calm state is when our intuition is speaking to us. Sometimes when we're like very emotional, we're having like an intense time, that's not intuition. That's more like our mind trying to give us advice. But when like let's say just one day you're getting to leave ready to leave the house and something tells you don't leave today, just stay home. I would listen to that because that's, your intuition trying to protect you, God forbid, from a car accident, for example. So it's going to come as a subtle thing. But yes, I would tell her that. And I would tell her like you're okay the way you are, you don't have to be what other people expect of you. Just be yourself. God created each of us to be ourselves. Yeah.
Beautiful. What final message or blessing do you have for those listening?
The final message I have is that the easiest way to connect to God is in our heart chakra. So God literally lives inside of all of our heart chakras. So if people are ever like, oh my God, where is God? I can't feel God. I would say, close your eyes, breathe into your heart, and just say, I love you, God. I love you, God. I love you, God. And you'll feel a response and you'll be like, whoa, there's something listening. So then somebody loves you and is always with you. Yeah.
So beautiful.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you, Mira.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dianati, for spending this time with me, and I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. So honored to meet you. And I hope you have a beautiful day, Mira. And thank you everyone for watching and take what you like and leave the rest.